Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Astroimaging channel. I sound very calm right now. I am very calm. I'm just coming down from a long 25-minute discussion about the ethics of astroimaging. One of our listeners, one of the people who follow us, has suggested that we do a show on that. And we've been arguing about whether we should do a show on that. And we've decided we will. We don't know how exactly, but we think what we're going to do is we're going to make a survey up sometime over the next week or so. And then we'll give you 4, 5, 6 days to get your answers in on the Survey Monkey, which we've never used before, but we're going to try to do it. And then we'll make comments about what we find on the Survey Monkey. Okay? So that's going to be coming up April 10th. What else have we got coming up? Oh, let me start sharing my screen and we will go through some of that stuff. Present now our entire screen. Boink, share. And my screen happens to have Steve here, I think. No, now I'm presenting to everybody. I want you to notice that Stephen Miller, who will be here tonight, this is the March 28th PixInsight Hubble Palette. If you go to the website, https, theastroimagingchannel.org, okay, and you click on these 3 links, you too can download the data that Steve's going to be working with. I'm not sure you're going to be able to follow as quickly as Steve is because Steve is going to fake some of this. I don't know if that's ethical or not, but we'll discuss that later, won't we? Anyway, Steve is doing a cooking show. You know, in the cooking show, when they show you how to make the cookies and they put them all together and they stick them in the oven and they go to commercial, and in 3 minutes worth of commercial, they didn't cook the cookies. The cookies were already cooked. All they did was take the cookies that were already cooked back out. It's fake. Anyway, Steve's going to be doing a little bit of that because he's going to be showing us about processing in the Hubble Palette with PixInsight. But I wanted to tell you also about the calendar. Steve's today. Bob Buckheim's coming back. He's going to tell us about how he built his observatory. I think we all want an observatory. And so Bob's going to be telling us about that. And then right here, we happen to have a shift in dates with one of our presenters. So we have an open spot. And we had somebody come along and suggest we talk about ethics. So we are going, after all, to talk about ethics. We think we figured out a way to do it that can keep the conversation civil. So we'll do that. Warren's coming back to work on processing with wavelets. And then we're going to have a treat. For those of you who are into making things for your telescope, you know, sometimes you can't find just the right things. You can 3D print them. And Graham Hay is going to come back and tell us about how he's learned some of this stuff. And we've got a number of people signed up to do different things. We've got an open date on May 30th. We've got an open date on June 20th and June 27th. We need you to fill those open dates. So please hit the contact button up here and tell us your name and what you'd like to do a show on. We've been really happy over the last month or two that we've had people volunteering to do shows. And that is one of the hardest things about putting on the Astroimaging channel for y'all, is getting people to volunteer. It's good if you know what you're talking about, but don't think that you've got to know everything that there is to talk about. It's okay to say some things that you don't know. It's okay not to be the world's best processors. Some of our favorite shows are just people that are trying to show us how they did some stuff. And we get a lot out of it. You know, no matter what level we are, no matter what level they are, we all get something out of it. Also, you'll notice on the front of the website, where, you know, the big title is here, but for gorgeous galaxies, click on TAIC shots. And this is where you can send us your pictures of the gorgeous galaxies from any time in the year. It says this apparition, but for a galaxy, this apparition, it's basically all year. It's not like Neowise was, you know, once every 86,000 years or something. And Orion, we did that. Remember, we had those good shows down there. Those two, Neowise and Orion, their apparitions are like months at a time, or 86,000 years or whatever that was. Anyway, send us what you got. We've already got about 15 entries. I noticed a few of you were sending in like a half dozen entries. That's fine, but remember, we want to get everybody who sends something in. We want to have some representatives, so we may have to cut some of your shots. So be sure you send us your favorite galaxy, maybe your favorite 2, maybe your favorite 3, not your favorite 15 galaxies, okay? So hold off on that. And we've got a couple of volunteers that are to help us put these shows together. We're going to be working with them maybe and figuring out how we can do this. We need help in all of this kind of stuff. Finally, I think it's good for you to know that we have, let me turn this off. We've got our conversation going on over here. That's where you guys in the club all talk about clubby stuff and what the weather is around you and stuff like that, and make comments and ask questions, we hope. Now, this is going to be one of the shows where you feel free to ask questions, and we'll be interrupting rather regularly if you got a lot of questions, okay? I also want to point out that you can hurry up and get your sweatshirts because like summer's coming, or your t-shirts, okay? And I think we've got all the announcements. Just remember, sometime in the next week, if you go to the Astro Imaging channel, we will somehow figure out how to get a survey together to ask you about ethical questions. And if you want to, over here, don't argue them, okay? Honest, because that really ruined our preparation session today. Don't argue them, but if you've got a question that you want included in the issue about ethics, go ahead and put it in there or send us in the contact sheet, okay? Ethics and Astro Imaging. Steve, are you tired of listening to me? Ready to go?
Yeah, I've been tired of listening to you, man. You gotta
Okay. Let's get out of here. Yeah. Stop presenting, and you got it, dude.
All right, appreciate it, Alex. I'm gonna go ahead and present my screen because I have some things to show. So we good? Everybody see my screen?
Yep. We're seeing a PixInsight screen.
Yes. So I have been doing astrophotography for all of 2 years now. And I started out, it was funny, we were talking about cell phones and scopes. This is what I started. And this little rig right here made me ask a question that cost me thousands of dollars and very little sleep. And the question was, can I do it better? You know, and so now what I'm here to do is talk to you guys about PixInsight. I've been through GIMP. I went through Photoshop, and I had no idea how to use any of that stuff. I'm now 2 years later, I've got a YouTube channel, Entering into Space. I talk to just all kinds of really cool people all over the world about astrophotography, I'm constantly chatting. I love to help. I love people asking me a question and taking the time to help them through. And I get just as much excitement out of somebody super proud of their image, you know, that I've helped them with in some way, as much as I do, you know, getting proud of the images that I take. So the data that if you've downloaded, or what we're going to be working on here tonight, is the Sol Nebula. And the gear that I shot that with is this particular scope here. It's an 80 millimeter Meade. And I've got the tried and true 1600 with the filter wheel, and everything's riding on an Orion Atlas mount. And the data that I have, if you've taken a chance to download it, if not, it's right here, is a real testament. I'm going to bring these up. This is my sulfur data, my HA data, and my O3 data. And this is a real testament of why we shoot narrowband, because of the signal differences between this high contrast, very fine detail of the sulfur, you know, your faint oxygen signal here, and then of course your extremely strong HA signal. And so what I want to do is I want to just take you through PixInsight, because trust me, I want to speak to the people who have the 45-day trial. I want to speak to the people who are just getting into this and they're going, why in the world? I have so many people ask me, why do I mess with this thing? It looks like the cockpit of the space shuttle. You know, how do I do this? There's so many non-intuitive things in PixInsight that I want to go through to help you find the joy that I have found in using this program, because it is definitely worth its weight in gold. So let's get started processing this. So we're going to take these three grayscale images here, and we're going to turn them, hopefully, into something that looks like this. This is your standard Hubble palette, your blue oxygen signal, your yellow gold, and some good star reduction, because the next thing that I want to do, or the process that I want to take you through tonight, is my opinion in creating a really good astrophotography image is depth. You know, you're taking two-dimensional information here, and how do you create depth? And not only that, but you want to really fade your signal and sky background together. I mean, you don't want these, which I've done, is a harsh contrast. You really want to fade this in and blend these differences between signal and background sky. So the first step that I want to do is I want to rotate these images, because I just like working on the Solar Nebula with it more in a horizontal position. And the tool I'm going to use is called fast rotation. And if you're new to PixInsight and you're looking at all this and you're trying to figure out where the heck are all these tools at, man, you come in here to process, all processes, and everything is alphabetized, and they're subcategorized in these groups over here. But if you have trouble finding it, remember, everything's alphabetized. So and I'm going to zoom back and forth. So the first tool is fast rotation. I've got it set to rotate 90 degrees clockwise. And let me back up here. And I'm just going to take this instance and I'm going to drag it over onto my O3 data. Happens instantaneously. Let's rotate the HA. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to rotate the sulfur. Now I work on these three data sets independently. I do not combine them right off the bat. And I do three things, which we just did the first one here. We rotated it. I'm going to crop it, and then I'm going to do a background extraction before I do any combining of this data. So now I want to crop these images. And what I'm looking for when I crop my images is I'm looking for the image that has the worst stacking artifacts. So you look down here, it's my sulfur. I've got the worst stacking artifacts. So I'm going to build a crop box around the sulfur that then I can apply to these other two frames. So let's minimize the HA and minimize the O3. And we're going to come in here to our sulfur. And the tool that we're going to use is dynamic crop to minimize our fast rotation. So up here in process, we're going to come to all processes, geometry, and then zoom in here, geometry and dynamic crop. So what we want to do is we want to click this reset button here. And basically what that's going to do is link the tool to the image. So we're going to click the reset button. And what that did is it drew this gray box all around our image here. So now we can drag this box in. And if you have trouble seeing it, I'm going to zoom in again. You see this little box when it pops out? It means it's ready to drag in, just like that. So I just want to bring this box in, just like that, and around that little stacking artifact. So if I wanted to call this good, I wanted to get as much of the background, I want to have data or the sky and this nebulosity as much as possible to get as much as the frame that I shot, then what I would do is I would drag this little instance, and I'll zoom in on it here. So these little instances down here, if you're looking at all these little check marks and X's and triangles and you're like, what is going on? This says new instance when we hover over it. So this new instance has all the information about this box. Its size, its orientation to the data is all stored in this right here. So now that I've drugged that off, it's like having a template that I can drag and drop onto the other images to crop them exactly the same, because that's key. Since we're cropping them before combining, we don't want to crop them different or else they won't combine. But to speed things up, what I've done is I'm going to close this tool. And I'm going to close that instance. I've got an instance already cropped here because I want to kind of speed up the process tonight. And I've really just focused in on the principal nebula and cut out a lot of this background space. So I can hit the check mark. It's going to crop. We can minimize it. So if we close this tool and we open up our HA, see, we can grab this little instance that I created, just like I showed you, and drag it over and drop it on the image. And let's catch our, whoops, we already got that one. HA is done. Let's go to 03. And they're done. So now I want to do what's called a background extraction. There's two ways to do it. And once again, just like I did with the sulfur image, and it's going to be my HA. And why is it going to be my HA? Because it has the most signal, right? So you can do two different processes. You can run a DBE, which I have an instance up here. These little sample points, and I like them big. But we're going to run an automatic background extraction. Because why? If I had just a small little nebula right here, let's say I was doing the ring nebula and all of this was background space, I would want to run a DBE. But because most of the image is filled with nebulosity, I found the automatic background extraction works the best with one adjustment from the default settings, and it is in the interpolation and output. So let's zoom in here. So the interpolation output comes default to a function degree of 4, and I changed it to a function degree of 1. That's basically it. So now I want to come down here to my target image. Everything else is default. And one thing I didn't explain before was most of my data has a radial gradient, meaning I've got an overcorrecting of flat. So I've got like a vignetting, I guess, if you want to call it. And the best way to tackle the vignetting is your correction to be division. And we are going to not change this. We're going to use division. We're not going to use subtraction. And then we're just going to simply drag and drop it onto the image. And what we're going to get is we're going to get the model that it removed. We can close that. And let's hit our screen transfer function here and see the new image. So guess what? That right there, to me, is worth its weight in gold in PixInsight. Just this tool. If you can see the difference in contrast and resolution and signal that you have between those two, that's awesome. I mean, I would pay for PixInsight just for that. So we can close that image down because we don't need any more. We've got a new ABE and see it listed right here when we ran it. So let's minimize that. Let's put it right here. Let's open up our S2. So watch, we can take this automatic background extraction. Let's open it back up. And let's drag it over, drop it onto the sulfur data. Close our background model, hit our screen transfer. And once again, great looking data, quick and easy. Let's minimize it. We're going to push that over here. Let's close the old image. We're going to open up our oxygen, do the same thing. Drag and drop. Close the background model and do a preview stretch. And it looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. Let's close the tool. Let's minimize this new automatic background oxygen, and let's close the old one. So basically we have rotated, cropped, and run a background extraction. And these three images now are ready to combine into the Hubble Palette. And real quick, I've got a bunch of tools over here. You see them all piled up. To me, these are the heavy hitters. These are the ones that I use the most. In the screen transfer function, I just want to explain to you what that is. And of course, you can find it up here in processes, all processes, S's, right? Screen transfer function right here. When you're bringing in your tools and you're bringing in, some of these things for the very first time, this is the one you want to have, because what this basically does, if I open up my HA data, and I hit F12. And I'm sorry, Mac users, I don't know what the alternative is to F12. Hopefully somebody can answer that for me. But F12 will actually kill this stretch preview and let us know that this is linear data. It has not been stretched. And what this screen transfer function does, this little nuclear button here, basically gives us a preview of what it would look like if we decided to stretch it to these parameters. That's all it does. The data is not stretched, so I can go back and forth. And so I have a project made that has all these tools, the screen transfer function, the settings within these tools, I saved off as a project. So if you come over here to File, you can go Save Project, and you can load that project. And all these come populating in here with the settings that I have. Makes it another time saver. So next up, we want to combine these. And the tool that I use is channel combination. So let's open it up. Let's zoom in on it here. We're going to reset it, right? And so we're going to set this data in here according to the Hubble Palette. And what is the Hubble Palette? It means from the reddest data to the bluest. So the reddest is actually sulfur. So let's grab that automatic background sulfur, the one we've been working on. We're going to drop it into the red here. Okay. We're going to take our next reddest data, the HA, we're going to put it in the green. We're going to take the O3, drop it in the blue. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to say apply global, minimize the tool. Let's take these guys and just kind of move down here. All right. So now we got an image. It's nice and black. Cool. So let's stretch it. And I want to show you something here. Let me zoom in here. The screen transfer function comes default with the channels linked. See that right there? Meaning when we hit this stretch, all the channels are going to move in the same amount. Let's zoom back out. So let's hit that and see what we get. Ugh. So we get, you know, and this is one of the things when you're doing this, you see something like this and you go running back to Photoshop or something that you're comfortable with because you're like, what in the heck? This isn't what I wanted. So let's unlink those channels and let's let PixInsight what the proper stretch is going to be. So re-click it. And now that's starting to look a little closer to our end result. All right. We've got some cyan, aqua, where our oxygen was dominant. You know, we're starting to see some yellow and where the hydrogen and sulfur are dominant. But guess what? This is still linear data. It hasn't been stretched. Let's hit it again. And we want to make this data nonlinear, means we want to stretch it. And the tool that we're going to use to accompany the automatic screen transfer is the histogram transformation tool. Once again, alphabetized. So here's something that is very, very non-intuitive when it comes to PixInsight. The screen transfer function is basically applying data. It's got data, once again, in this little instance right here. So we zoom in, the little green triangle. So this stretch and everything about this stretch is all stored on this little information tab. See, it says new instance. So we want to give that information to the histogram transformation tool. So we drag it up here and we put it in the little receptacle that says, put it here. I don't see it. It's not here. So guess what? You just drop it right here on this little band and nothing happens. Great. But we want to kill the auto stretch with F12. And we're going to take that same data and we're going to drag it over here and drop it onto the image. And we're stretched. Let's minimize the tool. So we know we're stretched. If we hit F12, it goes completely white. It means it's like it's stretched twice. So we've got our image stretched here. It's in the nonlinear state. And if you notice with SHO, another thing that pops up that was totally news to me is how much magenta. And that's actually, this image doesn't have a lot, but you can see it. Hopefully you can see it like around these stars here. You see all this magenta? And I don't like it, especially it's in the background. And sometimes it's really bad. You'll have these magenta halos around your stars. So I want to get rid of that. And like anything else in PixInsight, there's oodles of ways to do stuff. There's very manual ways, there's scripts. And if you don't know, processes are tools, scripts are combinations of tools to do a process. I hope that made sense. But I want to get rid of this magenta. And I'm going to show you the way that I do. It's kind of middle of the roadway. I'm going to come up here to image. And I'm going to come down to, let's zoom in here, invert. And what that's going to do is create almost like a negative of the image. But guess what? Everywhere it was magenta, it's now green. And we got a tool for getting rid of green. And it's this tool right here called SCNR. Comes standard, color to remove, green, right? Let's leave it at 100%. And we're just going to drag that instance over, drop it onto the image. Takes seconds, does its thing. You see all the green is gone. Let's minimize it. We're going to come back over here to image, come down to invert. And now we got a much better looking image. See all that magenta, all the halo around the stars is gone. And to me, that's pretty freaking cool. If you don't think this is cool, something's wrong with you.
That is clever. I never thought about it. That's so clever.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes you have to run it a couple times, but with this image, it's just the once. So awesome. So we got a really great image here, and I want to do the next step is to apply color masks to this image because I want to work on the different colors within this image. But guess what? I've got some really good looking stars. Yeah, I've got good star color. I mean, for narrowband, you're not going to get true star color, but you know, I've got decent stars. There's no big halos around them. They're not blown up. And so I don't want to mess with those stars when I'm stretching my color data, right? So I want to remove them. And now within PixInsight, there is a tool called StarNet++. Zoom in here again. If you don't have this in PixInsight, get it. Like now. Well, wait, not now because you're watching me, but right after, go get it. Okay, and download, go to the SourceForge, download these two files in here for your weights. And you want to make sure that AR mask is checked. And so what I would do is I would drag this over, drop it on the image. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull out all of my stars and save them on a star mask. And I would have a starless image to really be more aggressive with my color manipulation. But even though I've connected StarNet to my GPU, it still takes a while. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to minimize this image. I'm going to push it over here because I already have it done. So here's the star mask that it pulled out. Cool. And then here is my starless image. And I don't know about you guys, but it's funny how we go outside, we want to see stars. We want to see stars to guide on. We want to make sure our HFRs are good. We're all about the stars. And then we get in here to process and we want to get rid of the stars. But this is really cool. I mean, the amount of dark nebula that's in this structure here and the stuff that you can see, there's times where I just process this and I don't ever put the stars back in. Sorry, stars. But now that I have this starless image here, I can really start attacking these colors. And I don't use a process for that. I use a script. So let's come here to script. Let me zoom in. So I'm going to come down to utilities. I'm going to come over here to color mask. Okay. Let's see if I can do this. All right. So all of this is default. You see the target image is starless clone, something I named earlier. And I'm going for a chrominance mask. I'm using my strength at 100%. And the first mask that I want to create is cyan, because that's going to be where a lot of my oxygen is. All right. So click cyan. And because it's going to, let me move this over, because it's really going to focus in on this, and this doesn't have a lot of structure. You know, we were having a ethical discussion earlier. You know, honestly, we are all bound by structure. We can't change that with these images, but color is very personal. And you notice that, man. You see somebody process that and you'll see it so many different ways. I'm not trying to quarter you into saying this is exactly how you got to do it. I'm showing you what tools to use to get it to put a smile on your face. God, that sounded corny. Anyway, so we're going to hit cyan. We're going to blur that because it's this data in here that doesn't have a lot of structure. We're going to blur it to 4. And if you're having trouble seeing it, it's right down here. It says mask blur. We're going to blur that to 4. And we're going to click OK. And it's worth seeing. So here's our cyan mask. Okay. And we know it's cyan. Why? Because it's got a C. I used to rename them because I was like, how do you tell? But then all of a sudden I realized they were putting little letters there. So now it's the cyan mask. So let's put it right down here. So we're going to create another mask. Go back in here to scripts and utilities, color mask, and we want to do green, right? Because we want to get rid of the green. We want to change that to the yellow gold. So green, let's blur it to a 3. Pop in pretty quick. I mean, that's almost like an image, right? You can definitely see the difference in the masks that are being created. You get a little satellite trail through that green one too. So let's minimize it. I'm going to put these right here so I can see them better. Move you up here. So cyan green. Now this is a very important mask. It's the last one that I create when I'm doing SHO images. Come back in here to script, utilities. Color mask is yellow. Where you got yellow? Right here. We're going to blur it to a 3. Click OK. This is really cool. So, right? So this is some serious highlights. I mean, these little ghostly tendril floaty thingies, I don't know. They're really highlighted in this yellow. That's a very important mask. So let's minimize it and push that over there. So now we got an image. We want to take these masks, we want to put it on an image, and we want to manipulate it. And the tool that we're going to use is going to be our curves transformation tool. So let's open it up. Let's push it right here. Let me bring my little mask down. Housekeeping. Got to do housekeeping. Let's do that. Let's reset the tool. And so if you've been in GIMP or a processing program like this, this is going to start to feel familiar because it's curves. It's basically what it is. So let's take our cyan mask, let's open it up, and we're going to put that cyan mask on this image. Another non-intuitive thing. You see this little tab right here? If we drag it off, we just made a clone. It's easy, right? But we can also drag it off and we can put it right underneath here, right on that tab, and you see our image just turn red. By default, our color is vulnerable and our background is protected. See, it's more red than right here. But I don't want to see that. So I'm going to right click on the image. I'm going to go down here to mask. Let me zoom in. And I'm going to come down here to show mask and click that. So we know that our mask is still applied. Why? Because our tab here, our name tag, is this brownish, reddish, burnt sienna, whatever color, that color. So the mask is applied. So we're focusing on the oxygen. We want to get this from aqua to a bluish color. And so let's work on that. Let's come in here to blue, and we're going to lift that blue. See it start to, oh, but guess what? You can't see anything happening, can you? Why? Because all these tools have this little tool right down here called a real-time preview. So we want to click that. So now if I come in here and I select like RGB, you see now it's really jacking with the image, right? I can always reset it. So this real-time preview shows what you're doing here in real time. Let's come in here to the blue. Let's lift it up. I want to kill off some of the green. I want to pull down a little bit of the red. I want to brighten it just a little bit by creating a little S-curve, a little mini S-curve right in here with the RGB. Okay. And this little B component, this thing's badass. So I can take that B component and I can pull it down. And man, the blue goes crazy, right? So I can apply this stretch to the image. Let's click apply. What? That is not what we did. Wait. Okay. So another thing about PixInsight is this preview is reading this stretch and what's actually been done to the image. So if we reset the tool, reset button, click reset, then we notice now they're identical. That scared me to death the first time. I was like, what in the heck? All right. So I'm going to show you something really powerful here with that cyan mask. I'm going to close the real-time preview. I'm going to right click on the image and come down here to mask, and I'm going to say invert mask. So the background and everything around it other than this blue is now vulnerable, right? I'm going to open up a real-time preview. I'm going to click into the image here. Actually, I'm going to hit RGB and then click into the image. And you can see what's populating up here is our red, green, and blue levels along this linear line here, right here in the background space. And you know, we're pretty good. We're really close to each other. So you can see, if I move over here, you can see that start to creep up. So remember before I talked about depth, and you want to bring that nebula forward and kind of push the background back. One way to create depth. So what I want to do with RGB selected, I'm going to come right here, because if you look where these our levels are in our background, they're right here in this little quadrant. So I want to anchor this line. I'm going to put a click point here, come right here, put another click point. I'm going to come right here, right in the middle, and I'm just going to pull it down. Boom, just like that. I'm going to click apply, not apply, and reset. And I'm going to close the real-time preview. So the next mask that I want to choose is my green mask. Let's work on some green. So you don't have to take this mask off. You can just swap them out by dragging and dropping. We're going to minimize the mask, create a real-time preview. And so now we want to really focus in on the hydrogen and sulfur areas that are really strong right in here. We want to get those to be more of a yellow gold, according to NASA, I guess. So we're going to push that red like that. We're going to pull down some green. And you really want that to get just try to pull that blue out right about there. You're going to get crazy. So let's brighten it up just like we did before. Let's create a little S curve. All right, something like that. And then the C component over here, if we click it and we push it up, it's going to really saturate those yellows and reds. Something like that. Let's click apply. Pretty quick. Wow, it's on fire. So let's reset the tool, close the real-time preview. Let's open up our yellow mask. This is our really cool mask. Let's apply it. And open up a real-time preview. Let's just brighten that. Right about there. And then we're just going to add some red. Right about like that. We'll probably push our C component up just a little bit. And we'll click apply. So let's reset the tool. Let's close our real-time preview. So dig it, man. Oh, and by the way, moving around here in your images, if you hold the space bar and then click around, it's like the little drag hand. So look, I don't know what that little guy is right there. I wish somebody could tell me. He's cool. But we got some pretty good colors. We've really got some good dark nebula in here that's showing up. We got some great detail. And we can probably, let's apply that cyan mask one more time. And I would probably run back through this 2 or 3 times. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're actually gonna come in here to the B component and just pull it down just a little bit. Add just a little bit of blue. Click apply. All right. So let's minimize the tool. Let's right click on the image, come down here to mask. Always forget to zoom in, mask, and then we're gonna remove the mask. And zoom back out. All right, so we got a great looking image and we need to put the stars back in. All right. So I guess I got to ask, is there any questions so far? Kind of zipping along here.
There was one question. Sean asked, do you pull a lume before or after you process the image in color mask?
That's a great question. And actually, let me look here. I do not pull a luminance. Why? Because I'm going to get to the point where this HA is my luminance. So that's why I double down on this HA. This is about 16 hours of HA compared to 6 hours each of the oxygen and the sulfur. So we're going to use this luminance or this HA as our luminance here in just a second. But no, I do not pull that luminance first. This is all, no, I do not.
It's often that people don't use luminances when they're doing narrowband imaging. Luminances are used more in the RGB field.
And that's a great point. And I'm going to show you here coming up when I put these stars back in, I'm going to show you what led me to do this particular process. So any other questions or?
Yeah, there was a question. I'm looking for it now.
Well, our suburban astronomer says that little point that you highlighted was a Bach globule.
It's cool. It looks like a little fish. It's probably twice the size of our solar system, but it looks little to me.
You find them a lot in these emission nebula.
Yeah.
I found my question from John at Astra.
Yeah.
You didn't use a linear fit on the channels.
No, I do not. No.
Why have you gone that route instead of, because many people do recommend you linear fit the channels.
To me, after a background extraction, I tend to see that the background is acceptable. And that's the other thing about tonight and going through this process. I talk to so many people who go, I don't want to spend 6 hours or all day working on an image. So I guess I should have prefaced is that there are a lot of things that you can do to enhance this data. I guess what I'm trying to go through tonight is just really quick ways. I'm sure you're going to see this and you're going to go, man, he should have done this and that. This is something that I've worked on enough that within an hour, I can go from grayscale to an image you're ready to JPEG and share. So does that make sense?
Yeah, let me just add that there's a lot of ways to get to the same endpoint.
Mm-hmm.
You could stretch the individual SHO files after you take the stars out, but you're doing it through curves and math, which is fundamentally the same thing.
Correct.
And as Molly pointed out, the fact that you use the linking and unlinking basically says stretch them according to what they actually need rather than the overall picture, which is kind of linear fitting them in a sense. So now we've got more definition on perhaps what pulling a luminance means. And that is after you have, I think what Sean Maloney is trying to explain is after you've got the image that you want, you pull the luminance channel out and then work on the luminance to do some sharpening and smoothing and detailing and stuff like that. And then use it again back to and then you put it back into the image. I don't know. Yeah, some people do that. I know too.
Well, that's what I'm going to show the HA is for. It's going to blow you away.
Okay.
Get your popcorn. Okay. So we've got this image to this point now. And like you said, I could spend a whole bunch more time on color. But for the sake of time, I'm going to leave it right here. And I want to put the stars back in. So these stars need to go back into the image, right? And the tool that we use for that is Pixel Math. And Pixel Math can look very scary. There are some daunting equations out there for mixing data that I'm learning more and more about. But I'm using Pixel Math in its an extreme basic form here. I'm using we're going to zoom in here. I'm using a single expression, okay? And I'm going to open up the expression editor. And I've written just a really simple formula here. It is basically the image plus the star mask. So let's back it back out because I was working on it before. We want to do this starless clone. right here. Now, the reason that I have this particular portion in here in parentheses is I like star reduction. I think it's very crucial in order to, especially some of these targets that we shoot. There's so much stars, you can't even hardly see the nebula. So this is where I start some of the star reduction. So basically what I'm saying is the image that we just processed plus roughly 80% of the star intensity or the star mask is basically what that is. So I'm going to click OK to that. Now in this destination tab, let's drop that down. I want to replace the target image. Make sure that's checked. I don't want to create another image because then I've just got two images to deal with. So I want to replace the target image. Okay. And so if I just take this instance and drag it over and drop it onto the image, bam, stars back in, just like that. And see, our stars are still the same. They are, they're not overblown because trust me, when I first started doing this and the stars were in, I would get these horrible halos and I'd have to like go backwards and try to tone some stuff down. But now we're moving them. I've got pretty good star shapes, right? So as we were talking about the luminance, when I first did SHO processing and I came in here and I started looking around, I'm like, wow, it's a great looking image. But when you zoom in here like this, you get all this chrominance noise, this pixelation. I don't know what you call it, man. This looks horrible. And so I was attacking this with major noise reduction steps, trying to smooth this out. I was like, I don't get this. I don't understand what the draw in this is, and I don't understand what I'm doing here. So I'm going to show you how to really clean this up and create a very, very smooth image. And the first steps of that with this image here is we're going to convolute this image. Means to blur. So we're going to open up our tool here called convolution. We're going to open up a real-time preview and we can reset it so our image looks pretty normal. We're going to come over here to the standard deviation slider, the bottom one. We're going to push it over and push it right here. Do we start to see our image blurred? We don't want it super blurry. But what we're doing by blurring that image, let's accept that right there, is we're effectively taking all of that pixelation and smoothing it out. If you zoom back in here right now, what are you seeing? You're seeing color. When I shoot RGB, luminance RGB images, I shoot the luminance and then I shoot loops on RGB. Why? Because I just want the color. I'm going to blur it anyway. So critical focus on RGB isn't necessary. I get it close. And so essentially that's what I'm doing here. I've got a nice blurry image with all of that noise smoothed out. And you're like, man, we just did all that work. What the heck? So let's minimize this image. I'll push it right over here so I know where it's at. And I'm going to come back over here to our HA that was automatically background extracted. Okay, and it's still, if we hit F12, it's still in the linear state, right? And it's good signal, but it's got some noise in the background. So let's eliminate some of that noise. So what we're going to do is we're going to, like I showed you before, we're going to drag this little band off here. We're going to create a clone of that image. We're going to open up our histogram transformation. We're going to take this little instance like we did. We're going to stretch this image. Bam. Now you can see that is our stretch. Let's kill our preview, drag it over and drop it. And now we've got a non-linear image. If we hit F12, right? That is a mask. What we've essentially done is create a mask. We're going to take this mask and we're going to reapply it to the image. Just like that. Let's minimize our mask down here. Remove it. And we want to work on the background. So right now our background is protected. So let's right click on the image. Come down here to mask. And we're going to invert the mask. So the signal is protected. The background is vulnerable. And let's right click on the image here, go to mask and go show mask. So remember, it's still applied, but all this background is vulnerable. So what we want to do is is some of these tools, we want to do previews. We want to see what's going to happen before we apply it to the whole image. And this little square up here, zoom in, this little square right here says new preview, has nothing on it. Let's click it. Let's come right here in the background and just draw a little box. And see, now we've got this little tab that says preview 1. So we come here to preview 1 and we can see this noise that's in here. Even though I have a cool, mono camera, there's still noise. And we're going to do some linear noise reduction. And the tool we're going to use for that is multi-scale linear transform, a very robust tool with tons of capabilities that I'm going to use in a pretty basic form. I've got algorithms set to starlet transform. And what I'm doing here, because I've got the noise reduction checked, is these are my settings. You're more than welcome to copy them down. But I'm attacking the first 4 levels or layers of noise, strongest on layer 1 and progressively getting weaker as we go higher in the layers here. And I also want to make sure that my target is luminance. So you've got different choices down here, but you definitely want to target the luminance. Okay, so let's zoom back out. So again, we're going to take this instance, we're going to drag it over, drop it onto the preview. And this runs pretty quick, but it is going to attack all 4 levels. And it actually attacks the image faster. So hopefully see the difference. So help me out, but here on a PC, I'm going to hit Control, Shift, and Z or Z. Not sure how you do that in Mac, but this is like a toggle. So you can see noise, noise gone, noise, noise gone. Stars are protected. So let's click back to the image here. And now we're just going to apply that noise reduction to the image. And this happens super fast, so don't worry. So now our noise reduction has been applied. We're still in a linear state. So let's minimize the tool. And guess what? I'm going to talk all about PixInsight tonight, and I'm not going to bring up deconvolution once. Not going to use it. You can use it, and it'll work good if you can figure out how to use it. It does work pretty good, but it's not something that I'm going to dive into because I'm going to do a little bit of sharpening at the end in the nonlinear state. So we're not going to do anything else to this image here except for stretch it. So let's remove the mask. Remember, right click on the image mask and say remove mask. Okay. Same thing, histogram transformation. Reset the tool if we want to. Let's drag that information up, drop it onto the lower band here, kill the auto stretch, and then make that permanent. Let's minimize the tool. So this is our HA that's now been stretched. It's had background noise reduction. We haven't done anything to the signal or the high signal areas. So we're going to take that and we're going to apply it to this image. So let's create a little preview box around this really cool area right here. Let's go into the preview box, okay? And the tool that we're going to use to join these two together is LRGB combination. Let's open it up. And let's reset the tool so it's default, okay? So we want to turn off our red, green, and blue because we're not using them. We want to grab this HA. We're going to drag that up here. We're going to drop it right on the luminance. Now, here's another thing that's very counterintuitive, but something that took me a while to learn. Let's zoom in on it here. If we want to add saturation to this image, we're going to move the slider down. Yeah, we're going to move it down. If we want to darken up the image and not be so fuzzy and faded and bright, we're going to increase the lightness. Yeah. So let's not check the chrominance noise reduction just yet because we don't want to go through that process. We just want to see how this data is going to affect this image. Let's just drag it over. Let's drop it onto the image. Bam. I say bam a lot. But I don't know about you guys, but that's crazy awesome. I mean, this is seeing this for the first time and seeing that process of applying your HA. You go to all the trouble to shoot that HA, use it as a luminance because instantaneously, this looks phenomenal. It's beautiful. I'm sorry, it's just beautiful. We can still do some more work to it, but really, really digging it. And so now we want to apply that to the whole image. But we definitely want to make sure that chrominance noise rejection or reduction is checked, because that's also going to apply some obviously noise or color noise reduction to the image when it's applied. So definitely want to make sure that's checked. But this is a pretty lengthy process. If I were to drag that instance and drop it onto the image, it's a pretty lengthy process. So I have already done that. I'm going to minimize that image. And this is it right here. It's a little dark, and you're going to find that it will come in to be just a little bit dark. But watch what we're going to do to kind of brighten this image up. When we talked about pulling luminance, now we're going to pull luminance. We could reapply that HA, but let's come up here. Let me zoom in to this extract. All right, where'd it go? The CIAL component, which is basically your luminance. So let's just click it. And this happens pretty quick. So it almost looks just like the HA, right? But what we've done is we've extracted the luminance or the lightness of the image, and we're just going to take it and reapply it as a mask. Let's minimize it. Move it over here. Right click on the image, come down here to mask, and we're going to say show mask. So remember, our mask is still applied. We're going to open up the curve transformation tool. We're going to start open up a real-time preview window here. We're going to go to the RGB, and we're going to create two S curves. We're just going to brighten it. We're going to pull it down. We're going to go in here to the lightness. We're going to brighten that just a little bit and pull it down just a little bit. Okay, and we'll click apply and reset. So groovy. We've got a really good image that we can do just a few more steps to what? Create depth. So with that mask applied, I want to start or begin creating some more depth. And there's an awesome tool here in PixInsight for doing that. So let's create a little preview window. Let's grab this big area here. We're going to click into it. And the tool that we're going to use is called Local Histogram Equalization. Let's double click it. Let's open it up. Let's click it to default here. Zoom in so you guys can see it a little bit better. You've got different bit ratios. I just leave it set as an 8-bit because it runs the fastest. But I am going to move this kernel radius up to about 200. I'm going to pull that amount down. That's pretty aggressive. I'm going to pull that amount down to essentially 30%. And I'm going to leave my contrast limit right where it's at. Okay. Zoom back out. Zoom in here to the image. And let's just click this over to our preview here. So if we hit Control, Shift, and Z, you see it's subtle. You guys see that? What it's doing is it's darkening up some of these lower areas, and it's brightening some of the higher contrast areas. And what it's doing essentially is it's separating these detail areas from the background, right? Depth. That's what we're doing. So I love it. It's not in your face, you know, and you're going to find as you process, I mean, when you first start doing these processes and you put out an image, it's going to smack somebody in the face when they scroll. Like, it's going to hurt their thumb. You know, and I think over time, you're going to realize that less is more. You're going to start scaling back, and you're going to really look for more natural flows between colors and a little less contrast, I guess. So I like that. I'm going to come back here to the image, and I'm going to drag that off. And now I'm going to apply it to the image. Remember, before we were just applying it to the preview. Apply it. 34%. can do ahead that we apply are pretty quick. I mean, we're almost done with this one here. And it's done. Cool. So we've created some depth here. Now I want to come right back in here to the preview, and I want to sharpen this image up some. And the tool that I'm going to use is Unsharp Mask. Makes no sense, right? Unsharp Mask. And the funny thing is Unsharp Mask, if you come in here to processes and you come to convolution, which is blur, that's where you can find Unsharp Mask. This thing operates the same way. Let's hit the default button, see where it comes in at. I find that this amount at 80% is a little strong, so I'm going to back it back down. Everything else is default. So let's just drag it and drop it onto the image here. And we're just kind of, whoa, we're going to zoom in here. You kind of see our stars are just, hopefully you can see the stars are kind of tightening up enough. So back out of the image here. Let's drag it over and drop it on the image, and this one happens pretty quick. So now we are, we've been sharpened. So let's right click on the image, come here to mask, and we're going to say invert mask, because now we're going to do some non-linear noise reduction. And we can grab this little preview here, and we can come right back in here to our preview 2, so we can see some of the background. And if you zoom in, we've got a little bit of chrominance and luminance noise. It's not too bad, actually. But the quick tool to clean some of that up is ACDNR. And if we click default, pretty much everything is set to default. You're going to find that a lot of these tools, default settings work really good. You'll adjust some of them, but the only thing that I want to probably nothing. I think everything works pretty good, but let's just click lightness mask just for the heck of it to do a little more protection. And we can drag it over, drop it onto the preview and see what it does. So let's zoom in here, Control Shift and Z. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but it's definitely cleaning up the background. The thing that I did in the very beginning was I way overused noise reduction. So much so that these little stars would link together and make little filaments and stuff. Yeah, I'm guilty of that. I did that, but so I got too aggressive. I definitely learned to back that off. So we like that. Let's click on the image here. We're going to apply that noise reduction.
I see a lot of people do that, and yeah, it's a newbie mistake to learn your way through.
I've definitely done it, and and that's what I was trying to allude to earlier was the sign of when you see a really good image or something that really catches your eye, you're not going to see signal that just stops. I mean, it doesn't do that in space, right? It naturally flows out and ends, and you got a good signal here, but you don't just see a loss of signal. What I see a lot of people doing that really try to make their image pop is they drag that black point in and just clip so much of that fainter nebulosity that you can see in here. And that's another mistake that I've made. If they're out there, I've made them. Trust me. So we're at this point now where we're almost done. I've only got really like 3 more steps. And the next step that I want to do, let's go over here to preview, and we're going to delete all these little preview boxes and clean this image up, is I want to do star reduction. But I want to do selective star reduction, right? Because what am I doing? I'm creating depth. And I learned this process from a guy, I don't even think he's got his YouTube channel anymore, but he showed a process in Photoshop. And what I've done is figured out how to do it here in PixInsight, where you're only reducing certain stars, right? Because you got to imagine, like, if you were flying out there, or if you could travel out to some of these, these bigger stars are going to be closer to you, essentially. You'd think so, right? So you don't want to really reduce them. You want to reduce all these little tiny stars in the background, right? Creating more depth. So the first thing we need to do is, we need to remove this mask. We got to create a star mask. And we got a tool called Star Mask, right? And let me zoom in on here. So these settings are from thousands of star masks that didn't work. What is that thing like? If it doesn't work 1,000 times, it's only got to work once. Somebody said that. Lots of star masks that look horrible. So a noise threshold of just a little over 0.3, scaling to 10. Now this large scale right here, it's set to 1. And what's going to happen is it is going to make a nice star mask, but the star mask is going to be, or the little white spots around the stars are going to be a little big. They're also actually going to start being just a little square, but guess what? It's not really going to make that much of a difference. If I drop that down to 0, I'm going to get a really tight star mask, but it's almost too tight. So you could run the risk of it not catching some of these bigger stars. So I'm just going to leave that as a value of 1. Let's zoom back out here. And so this would be a process that would take a really long time as well. And I won't bore you with that. So I'm just going to minimize it and say that I've already created a star mask. And so like I was telling you, you see how it's kind of made little squares out of some of the bigger stars, but don't worry, we're gonna fix that. So I'm gonna bring in this next tool to help me with selective star reductions. That's like the cardinal sin of processing. And that is gonna be down here. If we go into processes and we're gonna go to painting, and it's the clone stamp. Yeah, it's the clone stamp tool. So let's click the image to link these together. And I'm going to change, zoom in here. I'm going to change the radius to 60. And I'm going to increase the softness just a little bit and leave the opacity at full. And so what I want to do is I want to remove some of these bigger stars. And some of these bigger stars aren't going to get star reduced. And then the fainter stars around it are going to get reduced, which helps create depth. I mean, to me, it does. So the way we work this tool is we're going to come here to a black part of the area. We're going to hit Control, click, let go, and then click on the star. So we're just going to start removing these stars, right, from the image. I wonder if this is ethical. Maybe. But trust me, it really works great for a great looking image. And no, I'm not going to sit here all night long and click off little stars. I might, but we do have a time limit. So I'm just trying to get some of these brighter stars that are kind of right here in the middle. So this is where you can click to your heart's content. Any of the big bright stars you want to remove. And let's grab this one up here and say done. So let's just click the check mark and close the tool. And to kind of round these shapes over, we can open up our convolution tool, reset it, click a real-time preview, and we're just going to push that little standard deviation slider up just a little bit, just to kind of blur that star mask. Click apply. Let's minimize the tool. We're going to close the real-time preview. And then we're just going to apply it to the image and minimize our star mask. All right, so how do we reduce the stars? We're going to use this tool. It's a mouthful, morphological transformation. Double click on it and zoom in on it here. It's pretty much my default settings. I have a size of 5, which is 25 elements, and then I'm using the circular reduction process. Let's zoom back out here, and this one's pretty quick. We're just going to drag it over and drop it onto the image. And bam. So let's zoom in here. So here's some of the stars that we didn't reduce. So let's just do the back. Every program's got a back button. I love a back button. So click back. You can see that our stars are bright. Move right here. We can really see it. Click forward. Reduced. Bright. See, this star didn't get touched. So when you zoom back out and you look at it, you see a lot of stars that got star reduction applied to them, but you see these stars that we turned off are kind of in the forefront, right? Another illusion of depth, I guess. So let's remove the mask. Click that. And we're going to use one more tool here, and then we're going to be done. Was that too fast? Did I go too fast? I don't know. But you see, this is kind of the point. It's like, I just took those 3 grayscale images and I got to this picture in, I don't know how long we've been doing this, not very long, just under an hour here. So the last tool I'm going to use is I want to enhance some of these darker areas in here. And I'm going to use a script for that. So I'm going to go up here to script and down to utilities, zoom in, and I'm going to use dark structure enhancement. So I find that 0.4, these are all default. It's already got the target image in here. 0.4 is a little aggressive to me. I'm going to push that down to like 0.3. And this one's pretty easy. We just click OK. And we let it do its thing. And you can see in the process window here, it's churning away. It takes just a little bit. But what it's going to do is it's going to really do a really bang up job in finding out all of these darker areas, this dark nebula, and reducing it and enhancing it. So it's done. So if we go back here, let's zoom in, go back. You can see what it's done, especially like this little area right here. You know, hit the back button, see what it's done. I like it. I find that 4 is way too much. It actually starts making the image kind of crunchy. Crunchy is a bad word in astrophotography. So let's see how we did. You know, we're I don't know, we're pretty good. We're almost twinsies, right? So the last thing you can do is maybe just come back in here and just open up keep your image here with no mask on it. Open up your histogram transformation, reset the tool, and this little, let me zoom in right here, this little track button, see track view, you click it, and it's going to show your histogram peak, right? And we're a pretty good ways off the left-hand side. So we could open up a real-time preview, and we can brighten it just a little bit, and then we can drag this black slider in just a little bit. Click OK to that, and we're going to call this done. So what do you guys think?
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think you got everyone's attention and don't have any questions, which means people are really watching what you're doing.
Good.
And they're probably opening up their PixInsight to see whether they could follow along.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it's nice to see some different techniques than what I usually see and what I've been using myself. So I'm going to go back, and I couldn't keep up because I had to go take care of a few things, but I'm going to go back and watch and try some of these out.
let me tell you something. There is nothing like finding a new technique and then digging into all your own data or your old stuff and reprocessing it all and going, oh my God, this was here the whole time. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's an awesome feeling. So, yeah. So any questions out there? Anybody got any comments? Anything you learned?
One thing you can help you a little bit is with the histogram transformation tool and your screen transfer tool, when you make the transition from linear to nonlinear, there's a little tick in the histogram transformation tool. If you tick that, so clear all that, So just when you have your linear image going to your before you do the transition to nonlinear, if you clear that. I can't click on your X, but that little guy there. That's a linear. That's that image is not linear right now. Can we have one that's a linear image?
Let me see here. So this would be linear data. That's the sulfur. That's
okay.
Linear.
So do your screen transfer. So you're happy with so just make an adjustment there. You're happy with that. Drag your triangle over to that. Okay. Oh, so see you got the tracking button turned on, but earlier you didn't have the tracking button turned off. So you can actually see you can see what's going to happen in advance, and you can do another stuff. So if you go back to your little radio active button on your screen transfer tool, if you hold that down, you hit Control.
Yeah.
Hit the control button.
Yeah.
Now, you can actually adjust the target background here. So if you were to drop that down, maybe, I don't know, 0.2,
Mm-hmm.
and just look at the, just change that value to 0.2 and look at the effect. No, next one up, sorry.
Yeah.
Target background.
Yeah.
Yep, just drop him down to say 0.2. Now that'll instantly make a change. I can't see it here, but that's okay. And that will have a different sort of stretching effect. So when you pull it over to your histogram transformation tool, it will look a little more contrasty.
Gotcha. So it's like presetting some of that stuff.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So you can,
and that's what I'm trying to do here and show that starting out, we're just going to rely on PixInsight, but this is great information that you're giving these guys because it's definitely more control. You're going to get into that more once you start understanding these tools more and having more control over that. So that's awesome. Something good to learn. I just learned something.
Yeah, you did a fantastic presentation. Really, really good.
Thank you.
Steve, there was a question here we didn't ask yet. Sean asked, when you did ABE, did you say that subtraction was for LP gradients and division was for vignetting?
So I have found that in the either ABE or DBE, if I've had images where I've had a lot of, because I live in, I'm in Central Florida. I didn't say that. I live in Border 7 between Tampa and Orlando. So a lot of sky pollution, light pollution. So I've had images that'll be extremely white here and then dark in the corners. And it's basically an additive gradient. And I've found that subtraction works better for that. But with narrowband data, I'm cutting out a lot of that light pollution, and I tend to have over-corrected flat. So I have a lot of vignetting. So I'll have really bright corners and a really dark center, which is, I guess they call that a multiplicative gradient. And so division works better for that I found.
So you can.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and say here real quick. You can fix that overcorrection. I've gotten it to work by adding an offset to my flats files of like, I'll pull in the master flat and add like 0.15 whatever brings it up to about the 0.8 to 0.9 level as an average, and you have to play with it. But that's how I've been able, because my flats have been overcorrecting a lot recently as well, and that seems to fix it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd like to get more information.
Another thing, when you're using DBE, and Terry and I constantly, this is part of our mantra, gradients are large.
Yep. So
you don't want to have a lot of points. And if you do have a lot of points, then you're probably affecting the luminance of the image rather than the gradient. And
well, I can tell you, and you guys, it's funny, you guys are going to have Warren Keller on. And here's a funny story. He actually messaged me randomly and gave me some advice on an image. And I said, do you know anything about PixInsight? I didn't know who he was, right? He messaged me and he was very gracious, and I get this information and it was really good. And I go, have you used PixInsight before? And he's like, I wrote a book on it. I was like, well, that's a definitive yes, then, isn't it? But both him and I agree that I have found a better, let's say this was expanded out and I had a lot of space, or I've got a galaxy right here. I found using these big sample radius points of like 100, and especially just around the edges, to work so much better than the tediousness of having like a sample point of 30 in between every one of these stars here and moving them all around. These big old blocky sample points work so much better.
I typically use about 6 of them, about 45 spaced in the corners, but I don't go right up to the corner like you are. I just pull it in a little bit.
Yeah.
And of course, you want to move them if there's a star there, just to get rid of the arithmetic. So I tend to have large ones, and I would just, maybe 6. That's about all I use in an image, because a gradient is a really, really huge guy. And if you're seeing something changing very, very quickly in your image, it's not a gradient; it's something else.
And remember, even when you did this gradient, even your dots right there, those emissions are everywhere in this image. And you have to be extremely careful what you subtract, like your lower right image, the third one in, that's on emissions.
Yeah.
which means you're subtracting it.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point, because I've done this before, and all of a sudden, like let's say right in here, you'll see all this blacked out. Well, that's one that you forgot to turn off, because what I typically do is when I do sample generation, I click generate and it generates a pattern. I just don't start plopping sample points in here. And I have found if you're doing this and you find some of this signal here to be completely wiped out, or a big black hole right here, you got a sample point there. But something about these big boxes, it's sampling more background than it is signal. And yeah, I don't put it right here. But I found that it really doesn't affect it. It may be, but it's inconceivable to me. It's imperceptible, not inconceivable. That's Princess Bride. But these big boxes, yeah, these big boxes here, they sample more background than they do star. And that's just my 2 cents on these. But what I have found here recently, though, is that ABE, I didn't like it at first, like with galaxies, because they're right here and you get so much background space. But with most of this image being nebulosity, the automatic background extraction set to that with that one adjustment works really well.
Sean Maloney's asking, what's the distinction between StarNet plus?
I don't think there is one. Maybe I just didn't say plus.
No, you did say plus, and many of us, and I opened up my PixInsight and it said StarNet.
It's the same. It's
Yeah.
like there's a standalone version of it, but I think PixInsight had to drop the plus because it's a disallowed character in like whatever backend language they're using, C# or C++ or whatever.
And of course, there's a new StarNet coming out eventually.
Well, I can tell you, I hope the new StarNet works better for Newtonian images, because I also shoot with a Skywatcher Quattro, and it does not pull out the stars as well with those little star spikes. I don't know if you guys have found that as well.
I have a problem with StarNet. I'm very dissatisfied with it. Pulling my stars out and separating them. They don't work that well.
Well, it actually works. I want to say it works perfectly for narrowband images. It struggles more for very dense star fields and RGB.
It has problems with diffraction spikes. It will leave a hashing pattern around the bright. So that is an issue.
Yeah. So if you're going for a starless image and you're shooting with a reflector, it's tough. You're going to have a lot of clone stamping if you're really. But with a refractor image like this, you saw it pull the stars out, and you can hardly see any residual effects of the stars.
Well, remember, when do we use star removal? We use it on 90% on narrowband images. Unless you're doing tone mapping on an RGB, you're using it on a narrowband image where you have fairly tight stars, and star removal is relatively easy with StarNet.
And recently, I've actually switched these are all ZWO, because I was just like everybody else. I bought the kit. I bought the camera, I bought the filter wheel, and I bought the 8 filters, all ZWO. And recently I switched to the Antilia 3 nanometer, and totally worth it. I mean, the ZWO filters are a great way to start, but those Antilia, I think I'm pronouncing that correct, 3 nanometer filters, and your stars are tiny, but oh my gosh, the difference in your signal is amazing.
Is that because of the 3 nanometers or the brand name?
Yeah, the 3 nanometer or the ZWO are 7 nanometers. So you're especially in the oxygen.
That's going to do a lot.
Yeah.
Well, there's a dramatic difference between the nebulosity versus star intensity on 3 versus 7s or even 5.
Oh, yeah.
It is certainly worth it if you're doing narrowband. Of course, you might have to mortgage your house. But
These you don't. They're actually pretty reasonable priced at like $200 a filter, so you can't beat it. I've definitely field tested them, and they work really well. Yeah,
what size is that filter?
1.25 inches.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I can't afford 2-inch filters. At least not anymore.
Okay.
So, yeah.
If we got any other questions out there, be sure to get them in. Also, I didn't see anybody asking any questions about ethics which may mean that we have a strange show coming up when we get to the ethics question, but we'll get there. Anybody else got any questions? Anything else? I was just flabbergasted at how smoothly that presentation went. It was just so beautiful to watch somebody that knew what the heck he was doing go through that and say, and then you try this, then you try that, and look at how this works. That was a great presentation. I really appreciated it.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay. I think we're about to say goodnight, everybody, are we? Did Bob ever get in here? Bob, it turns out that we forgot to invite Bob Buckon in.
Yes, I did forget that, indeed.
Yeah, but I hadn't blamed it on anybody yet. So
no, that was all my fault.
We're not all that organized. I think you've probably noticed that, dear audience. Anyway, remember, we need presenters, and we need people to turn in things for the tech shots, the TAIC shots. Your gorgeous galaxies. We're getting right smack into galaxy season, so take your pictures and send them on in. Thanks so much for being here tonight, Steve. This is a program that will be watched over and over and over and over again. And I am sure that there will be people out there that watch this program 10 times. One of the things we have to do is we have to get I was trying to do that, but I kept getting fascinated by your presentation. I was trying to make, put the links in on the web, on the YouTube channel itself. And I will try to get to that so that they stay up there. And I guess our box is going to have to hold these links for a while, hold the files for a while so people can get to them. At any rate, time to say goodnight. Everybody wave. Bye-bye. Good night. You're in charge, Molly.
All righty. I'll take us out.